Yeah, so that's what we're going to try to do today. Okay, we're going to try to debunk the myth that data processing is complicated and that folks can't do it. The reason I want to do this is I actually had 2 calls this week where people asked, they're looking to get into GPR, they're already technical folks. One was an engineering firm, the other was an archaeological firm, and they both are looking to get into geophysics, non-destructive testing, and specifically ground penetrating radar, and are curious whether or not they can actually approach data processing in a real way that's going to allow them to service their customers and add value. And so my response to them is, of course, you can handle GPR data processing. It's tough if you never get taught, but like anything else, you know, everything takes a little time. So luckily for us, we actually represent a company called GPR Slice, which creates a software that has an option to allow the software itself to sort of serve you up what you're supposed to do step by step by step, which makes the processing much easier.
Yeah, and every time I go through and work with somebody new to either Slice or to or to just GPR data processing in general, they're usually amazed after the first hour of just kind of being there and talking with them of how simple some of these processing techniques can be. And like we always say, 90 to 95% of the data that you collect with GPR probably needs very minimal processing, right?
Yep. Yeah. So. And can be done in a short period of time, right? I mean, that's the other big myth, I think, is that data processing has to take hours or days even in order to get what you want. And it's just not the case. And so what we're going to do today is I'll go ahead and share my screen. And we will pop into GPR Slice software and run through the process and see how long it really takes to get some data that's viable. And so what we've done already, kind of just take a step back, is we've already created the project and we've already transferred the data into the software package. So we're going to start from sort of the beginning after we've created our initial project folder. And so in this case, what we're going to show today is a project that we did probably about 2 years ago. It was a cemetery, historic cemetery, a couple marked graves, but they were just confident that there were unmarked graves in there as well, and they wanted to mark those burials and you know, and basically check to see if there was any additional graves outside of the fence that's been put around the cemetery. We have yet to find a cemetery that doesn't have at least one unmarked grave, and sometimes we have definitely found that there are graves outside of the fence. And so let's go ahead and go through this and see kind of what we come up with. So all you have to do is, in our case, we collected it with a DS2000 GPR. It's a dual frequency system with a 700 megahertz and a 250 megahertz antenna. And we applied a GPS integration with it. So all we had to do was basically walk our paths, and it collected the locations of each data point. And so what we have to do is just identify where our lines are within the folders. All we do is literally put radargram identifier plus extension, put import. We already told it was GPS. We told it what to look for. We told it what the file name was. And so in our case, LA01 just represents all the 700 megahertz antenna data. So we've created our project. We're going to go edit this file that we've created now. And again, it's so simple. All we have to do is press a couple buttons. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to read the odometer or the survey wheel. We press another button, it automatically reads what our time window was, which in this case was 80 nanoseconds. It reads what our sampling rate was, which in this case was 512. And then all we do is press, in our case, is going to say IDS to UTM. And so if we use sensors and software, we'd say sensor and software to UTM. If we use whatever it was, GSSI, would say GSSI to UTM. In this case, it was an IDS Leica Geosystems unit. And so we just press IDS to UTM, and it will automatically read those GPS coordinates. And
as we're going through this, if you're watching, guys, please feel free to put some questions in the comments if you have anything specific you'd like to learn or ask about as we're moving through this processing.
Yeah, and thank you. And also, you know, make sure that you click the like button. Please share this. We're streaming this live right now on Facebook. We will eventually stream this on YouTube as well. And so just do us a favor. We're trying to help as many people as possible, right? And we can't help more people unless we have some word of mouth behind it. And so if you can share it on Facebook or LinkedIn, or just with one other colleague or student or whatever, you know, we'd really appreciate it. We got 10 people watching right now at the moment. So put in comments, you know, and ask questions as we go ahead. Okay, so all we've done now, right, is we've gone through, we've collected where the odometer was, we dragged what the readings were for the time window and the samples, and we applied our GPS coordinates to it. And you can see here, it shows for each line we collected, and each one of these LA01, you know, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 all the way down is we've applied how many GPS points were collected during each one of those profiles. Okay, 47, 50, 51, 50, and these are all different lengths because everything wasn't consistent. You know, we were dealing with some obstructions and markers and things like that. Okay, we close this out. We save it, yes. All right, the next piece is convert data. And in this case, it's basically just doing a one-dimensional filter to it, a DWOW filter. Again, GPR Slice is just, it's a smartly designed software because it serves you up what your window's supposed to be. So all we do is say batch gain minus wobble.
So can you talk a little bit about what a DWOW actually does?
Yeah, so a DWOW filter basically corrects for signal drift or signal saturation. And what happens is it'll deviate from the mean, right? So here's sort of the way to think about it. I'll go ahead and annotate right here. So you can see these different lines, right? What happens is it'll drag away from 0 over time. And what we want to do is basically put this back to this 0 line. And what we do is we apply basically like a 0 median filter, but in the vertical dimension. And possibly even if I jack up the gains, let's go ahead and do a, here you can see it, right? So what's doing here, this is a great example, and I should be able to kind of increase it, is what you can see is this vertical streaking is from saturation, right? And what's doing in any given trace is it's moving that trace away from the mean. And so this blue set here shows the absolute raw information. Absolute raw. Most programs will not show you raw. They show you raw as DWOW'd data, but it's not raw. It actually has the DWOW filter. What GPR Slice does, it gives you the actual raw information. And so what we're doing is converting this blue trace to this green filtered trace. And so this is what we're actually going to work with after we do the the batch gain minus wobble, right? So I'll go ahead and do a gain reset on it. Again, a batch gain minus wobble, and you can see it's going through and just doing it to each line, file 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way through 32, which is a total number of profiles that we collected. Okay, so that's it. We're done. We just X out. The next piece here is we're going to review our GPS track. And that's it. That is the GPS track. And so what we had here, again, I'll quickly annotate this, is the fence line for the cemetery was here. Oops, well, not there. My bad. Let me go ahead and fix that. The fence line for the cemetery was here. And through this area. And so that was the fence. Okay, that was the location of the fence. And so we were checking inside of the fence, but also on the outside of the fence to see if there were any additional burials beyond the fence limits. And they may have to move those or just re-fence those unique ones in. So our GPS track looks great. This was done with an RTK GPS. Actually, it was a Leica Geosystems GPR. Excuse me, DS2000, but it's tied in with a Leica Geosystems GPS, which we actually do sell and support 2 of their GPS products. And so that let us know if you're ever interested in learning more about it. We also sell and support lower cost options from MLID. We're just trying to help people get better, more accurate, localized data. We knew how much it helped us to have a GPS attached to it. So we have GPS that range from, I guess about $1,600 all the way to $22,000. So if you're interested in looking at GPS with GPR, let us know.
And once you go GPS with your GPR, you're not going to go back. It's
exactly.
You're just not.
Look, now Dominic, when I try to send him out to the field to do a grid, he goes, I don't even want to go.
Yeah.
Right. He goes, I don't want to go unless I can take the GPS with me, because it makes life a lot easier. Yep. And so, so this was the GPS track. This system actually does have the ability to filter GPS based on whether you have fixes or floats or anything like that. And so it gives you the option there. You can actually remove bad GPS points, and you can decide what the error is that you're willing to accept, whether it's plus or minus 10%, 20%, whatever it is. All of ours look good, actually. All of ours are within the precision settings, which is a fix. So we're fine. That means that they're about 1 centimeter accuracy. But we can go ahead and just delete double GPS. There were none. We can delete double scans. Were none. And then any extra GPS. And there were none. So we had a good, clean GPS data set here. That's it. Now we're ready to start processing our information. And so you can tell that as we've gone down, I just keep going back to this file menu. And I went create my new info file for my project. I edited it. I converted the data. I looked at my GPS track. If I did a grid, I would just look at the grid plot instead, but did my GPS track. And all I'm going to do is go to this set of what we call blue box, and it's going to roll me through my filtering steps and my plotting steps. So it's only going to take a few minutes now. We already did the conversion, so I won't click it, and we'll just start from navigation. We'll do a background filter and a bandpass filter. We will do a Kirchhoff migration and a Hilbert transform, and then we'll slice it up and we'll do a low pass filter on it, but we'll do a 3x3 low pass filter when we get to it. I'll go ahead and remove processing graphics so we can roll through this quick. And this will show to everybody just how easy it can be. So it did my navigation. Now it's doing my, time zero correction for me. Now it's doing my background filter for me. Okay, and it's not being an aggressive background filter. It's a pretty basic one. Now it brings up my gain and bandpass options. And again, I'll kind of increase this a little bit so we can see better. But we'll do an AGC gain. And actually, I think we can do better. I think this is poor because it has some metal emanating from the top, so it's making it awkward. But we can go ahead and look at a different plot. Here's a good one. So now this is much more appropriate. And you can see there are two responses which are likely to be graves right here. And so the other thing that we can do, right, is we're going to show where we're going to cut it. And so what this is showing us on top is all of the frequencies that were returned to the GPR. So we have a certain set of frequencies that we care about. And it's showing us, you know, where those frequencies are. It's also showing us where there's some noise coming in at these lower pieces. And so we can just decide where we want to cut it. And all we do is literally, we left click, all right, we right click, and I press help set. And you can see how much of that garbage it removed. Okay, and again, I can do that. Go ahead, Tyler.
No, I was just going to ask, like, so we talk about where to cut, where to make those determinations, and beyond just looking at the radargram itself and making these decisions, you can also begin to ask questions about what type of antenna you were using. So in this case, this is a 700 that we're the data set we're looking at. And when we talk about the frequency distribution for the signals that are put out from a 700, it's, what would you say, plus or minus 50 on either end percent? Sure. Yeah. And so you're talking about in terms of anything outside of what, 1,000? 300
to about 1,000, yeah.
Yeah, and so anything between 300 and 1,000 you can expect to kind of as normal. And anything outside of that is almost guaranteed noise. So as you're moving through this, you can begin to see that there's some really, like, this is a perfect example where you're at right now. We have some noise at like 12 and 13 and 14. And we know for a fact that that is likely, that's impossible to come from that antenna.
Right.
And so that's something that would 100% be worthwhile to cut out. And so if you're ever worried about cutting too much or cutting too little, you can begin to work through kind of small equations like that. What antenna did I use? And kind of what am I expecting the antenna to put out and receive?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. Right. Again, like with this other spike down here, which is a little closer, right over there, we just saw one. Sorry, I keep pressing it. But, you know, we keep getting spikes at around 200. Right there was one. It's just outside of the range of what we are looking for with the 700. And so we can cut those out. And you can see the static on the bottom. And so we'll put it in, like you said, maybe at about, 300 or so to maybe about, 900-ish. Once we do help set, you can see a lot of that garbage was removed from the bottom of the profile.
And that's the importance of knowing what machine you're using, choosing the antenna to match the survey, and when you're coming back to process, keeping all that in mind as well.
Yep, absolutely. Again, here's another great, example. We're gonna have a couple graves, it looks like, sitting in here. So we can just go through and look at a couple different options here, line by line by line to see, where our best bet is going to be.
Yeah. So we had a question in chat, and it said, Daniel asked, on large sites collected over multiple days, where in the process do you recommend appending the data together?
It's a great question, and it's going to depend on how different the site conditions were day to day, right? So if you had actually similar site conditions, we would generally recommend do it right in the beginning and process it all together. But if the site conditions were varied from day to day, you might have to actually process each day alone and then just kind of synthesize them after processing has occurred in a GIS or CAD database. And so you kind of just have them, buttressing up against each other, because, you may get completely, even using the same antenna, you might get completely different wave velocities from day to day to day. And if that's the case, you can't synthesize them together because some of your depths are going to be totally off. And so what we would do is get the depths right and then just process them and then put them together in a GIS or CAD database later. But if you had similar conditions day to day to day, like let's say it's midsummer, hasn't rained, it's all dry every day, and it's pretty similar. In that case, we would say you could probably do it in the beginning. And this software gives you the option to basically append it and say, day 1, day 2, day 3, and then put it all together in the same project.
Yeah.
It makes it really simple. But that's a great
it rains at all, I would say, if you get any moisture on the ground, if there's a water truck on a construction site, if there's any water, that's going to really change those signals.
Absolutely.
So that's probably
we've seen that from morning to evening even.
Oh yeah.
So, okay. Well, anyway, this is done, right? So this process is done. We know we use the 700. We cut it about 300 and about 900-ish. And our data here are looking pretty good. We can always adjust it if we want a little bit ourselves. And so we can just literally choose, maybe that's too much there, point by point by point where we want to stick, each one. And so it's up to us to choose. So we'll go ahead and leave it at about there. We X out, and now it's going to run that process on all of our lines. Okay, so next this brings us up into the migration filter. And my stuff is maybe a little smaller because it's got the resolution on my computer is very high. But we could always adjust it. So we can say, go 1600 pixels out, and we can say go 600 pixels down. We can resize and redraw it. It's up to us. I mean, in my case, actually, maybe I go to 2000. And so what migration does is it basically accounts for distortion of the returning signal. Obviously, none of the graves have an actual hyperbolic shape, and so it wants to condense those to a point where, or as best as it can. In our case, we also are going to use this menu to do our hyperbola fit in order to identify how fast or slow the waves are moving. And so what we want to do is find some options with actual hyperbola in it. Maybe I will bring it down a little bit, actually. Okay, so here we have some hyperbola, and actually it looks like it's been fit pretty well already. It's saying that our dielectrics is 16.7, but we'd be able to adjust it if we want. Thank you so much for the likes. Please, everybody, hit the likes and the love buttons and the hearts and the whatever in the stream. We do appreciate that. And again, please share this with, on Facebook or on LinkedIn. It helps us out a lot. But that's it. So over here, right, we can adjust this to whatever we want. And so, it was pretty typical sort of Georgia clay, moist, wasn't too saturated, just sort of fits in pretty appropriately here. What we might want to do is adjust the actual aperture out a little bit. That's too much. That's still probably too much. And so this aperture now is about fitting for what we're going to actually put in the migration. So we can go ahead and again look at lots of different profiles. We want to be careful here not to actually do this on a grave, because the grave is going to be a large object and it's going to artificially overestimate wave speeds, and so it's going to put them deeper than they really are. So something that's closer to the ground like this, which might be sort of a tree root, and again we can adjust this out a little bit, may be more appropriate. But what we can do is a test migration, and it'll show us how it did. And in this case, it actually looks pretty darn good. Yeah. Like over here, I mean, these really come to points. There's very little smiley faces going on. So this is probably pretty appropriate. We could always look right at another one. Here we have a bunch of graves in a row. Test migration again and see. So again, here it looks pretty decent. I mean, these are they're not points because they're not point targets, but they're getting controlled quite a bit with this migration. Maybe it's a little bit over up here, but it's our choice. And if we want to do multiple ones, we can.
And that's the one really nice feature about the test migration option is that when you're unsure if you've hit something at 90 degrees, if you're unsure of what you're utilizing to do that hyperbola match, this is a really quick and easy way to double check yourself. If your hyperbolas are turning into smiley faces, it's too much.
Right. Yeah, if they're turning into smiley faces, it's right. It's too much. And if you haven't, and if they're still looking like hyperbola, it's not enough.
Yep, exactly.
Right. It's one way or the other. But this is pretty interesting. This, I think, will look pretty good at the end. I mean, we have nice, clean kind of margins between these responses. It'll be interesting to take a look and see. But, I think hopefully the point that people are getting is this shouldn't actually take a lot of time. And we're spending a lot of time talking about it. Truth is, we'd be done by now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'd have visuals for the report already exported.
Correct.
Yeah.
Our visuals would have already been finished at this point. But again, we appreciate the questions and we're trying to make our time to go through this at a pace and explain what's going on kind of with each step. We don't just want to do it and not explain it because it doesn't do anybody good that way. Okay, so now it's going to do the Hilbert transform. And now look at these. I mean, these look like really clean responses on those probable burials.
Yeah, they're obvious too.
They're very
obvious. Really obvious. Yeah.
Yep.
And so can you talk briefly what a Hilbert transform actually does to the data from the radar?
A Hilbert transform, right? And so you'll notice as you're looking at these comparisons between the migrated and the Hilbert data as it was going through, all of our responses were in black, right, on the Hilbert transform stuff. And so what the Hilbert transform does is it basically takes polarity information, which is positives and negatives, and converts it all to positive. So it gives you an absolute amplitude response instead of a plus and a minus phases of the response. And so it kind of helps when you're going to do, we don't find this to be ultra necessary all the time, but it is a big help in visualizing data when you're plotting it as a time slice or as a 3D model, because then you're not contending with alternating colors for the same target. And so it's a really big help in that case. Okay, so now we're in the slice and resample. And so here, again, it's sort of, you have some options. To make this really simple is we just generally do a 50% overlap. Again, this is what I learned from Dean, who wrote this software. And so when some guy who writes software like this tells me the way that he does it, I listen. And so we do a 50% overlap, but it gives you the option. You know, some people want to do 20%, some people want to do 0, which I wouldn't. By going 50%, you get a nice smooth set of transitions from slice to slice. You can choose then how many slices you want, whether you want to do 20 or 30 or 40. It's your choice. If for our case, we'll go 20. If let's say we wanted to do 40, all we would do is say help thick, and it adjusts how large each slice is going to be, okay, to the nanoseconds based on however much overlap we have. We'll do 20 for the nature of time. I click help thick, and now it's saying, okay, each slice is going to be 7.33 nanoseconds thick. It's totally up to us. But here we generally do 50% overlap, and then between about 20 to 40 slices, depending on the project, purpose.
Yeah. Well, help slices will adjust some of automatically. So if you did want to let the program decide based on the depth and the number of samples that you have, the help slices will choose accordingly. But I do like choosing kind of a specific number based on what you want.
Yeah. That's a great point. So the point is you have options. Look, there's a lot of options. This is why people get a little overwhelmed, right? They're like, well, look at all this stuff. You don't need all this stuff right now. Just here's the options. This gets you through to your data to be finished. I mean, we pressed one button here and decided how many slices we wanted. We pressed one button, and that was it. And now we're able to X out, and it'll create, that next set of sliced files that's going to use to grid the data. And at the end of this, somebody asked if we could show the system. We can definitely show an example of what the DS2000 looks like, but everyone can just go and look that up. It's like a Geosystems DS2000 is what we used here. And we use the Icon 60 in this case, but we distribute GGO4 and GS18s from Leica, as well as EMLIDs. Okay, so next brings up, and it's saying, how do we want to plot it? What's our grid cell size? Smaller we go, the finer the detail is going to be, but the longer it's going to take in order to do this process. It's really going to depend on what you're looking for. In our case, we're looking for graves. I'm going to go ahead and go reasonably detailed at 10 centimeters. But if we were looking for voids or something like that, that might be too much detail. And so we may want to do something larger because a void itself might be, 5 or 6 meters on a side. You don't need to image that at 10 centimeter pixels, right? For us, we have something that might be a half a meter by a meter and a half. 10 centimeters is going to give us, a nice pixel size. Search radius, this is going to also depend on how much you want to include in your actual, in your cell. So it'll also depend on how far apart you were. We were about 50 centimeters apart for each one of these data, collections. And so we can go ahead, we'll go and use 1 meter in the X direction and 1 in the Y direction, and then a blanking, which is like how much is it going to fill in as 1 meter. So this is pretty kind of typical for this type of project. And again, we exit out, and now it's going to show us the images. We could always turn this off, so it'll take longer as we show the images. And so if we turn processing image graphics off, now it should just run for us without resetting the images. And that'll make it move faster. So it's up to us to use them or not. And even here, you can start seeing some of these graves popping out. And there's one there right now that's outside the fence. So this is a really good, successful project that we had. And the truth is, processing is almost done.
Yeah.
Now it's going to
and this is going to be good enough to provide visuals for a report, to provide interpretations for where these unmarked graves might be. And so we've taken, like you were saying earlier, we've gone slow through the process, but you could realistically end up with these visuals from this exact data in 10 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, 20 minutes, less than 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. Very quick.
And so that's just the power of having the software afterwards. Pull the data in, sit down, run through a blue box, run through this automatic processing step, and spit out these beautiful visuals that clearly illustrate the data, as you can see here. Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, and it's oops. Where'd you go? And so look, in this case, now it's in 3D, right? So we can change it around. We can do whatever we feel like with it. It's totally up to us. We can step it down and start looking at graves as they're coming out. So obviously here's a row of graves. Here's another row of graves. And these start to pop out again a little bit deeper. Here's another row of graves. None of these graves up here had any markers. Yep. So only from this point down, right? So only in the bottom half were there any markers. And so we have several graves that we obviously can see already that are above that. And so there are additional graves, an entire row that was missed, as well as stuff outside. So these are just nice, visualizations. Easy, simple. You can actually bring in, I can try to bring it in. Let's see. Yeah. Google Earth.
Yep.
I'm not sure where it went, but may take a second. Well, actually, what we should do is, I'm going to get out of here, show you one more power of, now that it's done, is of having a GPS with the data. You're able to actually extract topographic corrections right from the GPS. And so in this case, we would just do static topography. Makes it so simple. You just press 3 buttons. Extract GPS. Okay. Oh, it doesn't agree with the number file. Let me see here. Okay. Okay. And then we would just actually maybe want to do this a little bit further out. And go ahead and start gridding. That's done. Extract them from there.
So while we're working on this, Daniel asked another question about how we export the locations we found to the GPS to go mark them in the field.
Okay, great question. I'll answer that in just a second. Mm-hmm. My point here is, you can see this is actually the topographically corrected data, right? So what we had was, we were on a hill, right? So there was a slight slope in these data. And again, we can kind of adjust this as much as we want. So that'll accentuate it a bit, but this will kind of compact it a little bit. And so, we were on a little bit of a slope. And what you can see, a couple things, right? So that's the actual topography. In addition, you can see that there are sort of rows. Here, you can see that there are rows in between, right? So here's our row of graves. So let me start to step down here to show the graves. So here is rows of graves. Here's a row, here's a row, here's another row. And in between these, there's actually erosion occurring between the rows of the graves. And the GPS, because it was centimeter accuracy, was able to record that detail of erosion. So we have our slope, and then we have our erosion gullies, which you can see right in here. Right.
And that's just another piece of information that you use from just one collected data set.
Yep.
Like we went out there, and the entire point was to, okay, we're going to collect the GPR data with GPS. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, now you're getting your topographic information when you import it and work it through here. And you're able to use not just the GPR data, but you're also able to use topographic data in your interpretations. Here are these very clear erosions. Here are these lower areas versus the kind of very clear rows you have of graves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely is a great point. It's there for you, right? Whether you want it or not, you don't have to do anything different, right? Or add anything. It's available. If you need it, you can always extract that additional information. All right, so to handle the question, which was how do you export locations, right, that you find with the GPS to mark them in the field after the fact? Well, this allows you to do a couple things. And so you can actually go in, you can export slices themselves as KMZs. Let's see, JPEG. Let's see, where's my, bitmap, I'm sorry. Bitmap all KMZ, and then you basically can export these. And when you export them, it'll come up as a KMZ file that you can put into Google Earth and literally take that out to the field and walk yourself to each one of them. Second is you can actually export in a variety of different ways. Well, here, let me do this real quick. So we'll go ahead and export these. First. And then you could bring them up. And then the second, I'll show you the second piece is you can actually do interpretations right in GPR Slice, and you can export those as shapefiles to ArcGIS, or you can export them as DXF files for CAD. But now those KMZs are exported. And so if we wanted to, right, we could always go in and see if I can do that here for a second. Let's see, Mike. They would be in, I think, my JPEG folder. Let's see.
Yep, they've been JPEG folder.
Yep. And so, here we go. Yeah. So here, for example, here we go. Any of these, you know, we could just try to bring this one up. Let's see what happens. Look, we're doing this on the fly, so I don't know. This thing may crash on me. I mean, I have no idea, but that's what you get, right? I mean, this is just, we bring to you real life, right? This is what we do when we sit down, you know, and we'll see what happens. But, you know, hopefully not. Hopefully it zooms right in. And there it is, right? So this is actually right on the cemetery, you know, where it is. And you can just literally go out and pop those in. You know, again, if you have ArcGIS Pro, for example, you can import KMZs into ArcGIS Pro, and you can just pop interpretations of these things right in there.
You can also export as world file from GPR Slice as well.
Look at that. I mean, look how it sits there.
It's perfect.
Right? And so, by the way, you can see where the fence line is out here. Okay. This one on the left is not in the is not inside the fence. That's outside the fence. You know, so we're finding stuff. The other thing you can see, which is really interesting, is you can see where a lot of these markers are, right? So they're below here, below this. I mean, there's like one up here, but below that, there's no other markers. But when we turn this on, there's stuff all in here. And we maybe didn't choose the best slice for this row, but there is lots of unmarked rates. There's quite a number. But you can export this stuff, and then that's a couple ways that we would handle it. Number one, we'd either take this and just walk ourselves to it, or we put it into ArcGIS, do interpretations right in ArcGIS, and then you can basically take that and put it on a GPS as your background and walk yourself to your interpretations. Either way.
Also give coordinates as well. It's very easy.
Or just export the coordinates. And you just go to coordinate to coordinate to coordinate. Yeah, there's a number of ways to do that, but it allows you, that's what's nice about the software, is it allows you to sort of choose what you want to do. You know, and again, if we I kind of try to do this, let's see here. But you might be able to come in here and do an interpretation. We have to, you know, sort of maybe do like a rectangle or something like that. And, you know, and I'm not going to go crazy here, but you can put a, you know, interpretation in somewhere. And then once the interpretation's in, it gives you the option to export the interpretation as a shapefile. Let's see, export. Not sure if that's actually where it is, but it gives you a number of options. So, so that's what you have. You know, you have a couple things there to choose from. Anyway, all right. Well, I'm gonna close it down right now. Anyway, so look, any questions you have, you know, get with us. Go ahead and ask, you know, your questions. We are happy to help you out as much as possible. You can put your questions into the stream, or you can just reach out to us at bigmangeo.com and fill out the contact form. We're happy to help. Go over to bigmangeo.com anyway and check it out. see all the stuff that we provide, training options. We provide equipment, rental, sales, and support. We provide support service, project support services. If you don't want to do the data processing yourself, we are happy to handle the back end for you and just churn out deliverables for you in a condensed period of time. We basically will work as if we're working, for you. And so we have all that. Tyler, any closing remarks?
I mean, generally it's data processing is not scary.
Yeah.
If you kind of just take a little bit of time to sit down, understand what you're applying, why you're applying it, and kind of work through it. So like, and just to reiterate some of the things we mentioned at the very beginning is that most data only require very minimal processing. Go throw in a background, go throw in a bandpass, migrate if you need to migrate, add a gain if you need to gain, and work from there. You don't always have to use all these fancy filters and fancy transformations. It's not like you say, it's not the prettiest picture contest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get the interpretations you need to interpret. Don't create, false data. Don't, try to transform it in any specific way, one, side or the other. Just get in, work through it, see what the data is telling you, interpret based on your knowledge, and go from there.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, right? You brought it kind of back to what the whole purpose of this stream was today, right? Which is it doesn't have to be scary. Now look, sometimes it is, depends on the software you're using. But if you have a little bit of hand holding and somebody's showing you how that blue box works, anybody can use that blue box.
Yep.
And we can, easily go through and offer people the little bit of training they need. Actually, we as a distributor GPR Slice, we offer some onboarding with it, and we'll walk you through that with your data.
Mm-hmm.
You literally can Dropbox us your data, and we will walk you through it in a personalized, live, kind of virtual training if you purchase it from us. And so we'll make sure that we don't just dump the software on you and kind of leave you to do it on your own. We are here all the entire step of the way, but in reality, you don't need us for that long, right?
And we also offer the full online on-demand course on our academy. So you can go on, we have 6 hours now of
something like that. Yeah.
We've had
42
probably 5
videos.
or 6 hours.
That's just of the GPR Slice training, right?
Exactly. And it goes through
3 or 4 hours of data processing training available, plus all the other courses that we have on there, and we're adding more. So yeah, we definitely recommend, and do us a favor, just go check it out. Check it out and let us know if you have any questions. Go to bigmangeo.com and you can just go into LearnGPR Academy from there and see what we offer. We're here to help. We're happy to help. I think actually our utility locating 2-hour webinar is free at the moment. We're offering that free. So, just pop over there. It's a free 2-hour training at LearnGPR Academy, and you can access it through bigmangeo.com. And we just, want to hear from you. So Tyler, the one and only, thank you as always. I appreciate you coming on and offering, suggestions and great insights. Everybody who tuned in, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Make sure you go to our website and subscribe to our free trainings, and please go to YouTube as well and subscribe to the channel. We try to add videos every single week there, which are free and just available to help folks. In the field, to help engineers, help contractors, help subcontractors, help environmental professionals, archaeologists, and so forth. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. We wish you the best, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.